Hey everybody, this is Alzorath, and after a handful of comments, it seems like a character's stat guide may be in order, so let's go ahead and break this down. In Diablo 2, you have 4 character stats: Strength, Dexterity, Vitality, and Energy. The most apparent effects of these are equipment requirements for Strength and Dexterity, and the life and mana boosts from Vitality and Energy respectively. That said, there are intricacies and benefits to each of these stats that players, new and old, may miss or misunderstand. In this video, we'll do a quick overview of the effects of each stat, as well as listing off some of the common rules of thumb used in character building that you can lean on for most basic builds, though it is worth noting for odd builds or PvP builds, a bit more attention may be needed since min-maxing is more common there. That said, let's jump on it. First off, Strength. Strength's most apparent effect is to meet the minimum requirements for equipment. A requirement you will need to keep an eye on for pretty much every slot except for jewelry and charms. It's worth noting that the highest strength requirement in the game, though, is the Thunder Maul at 253 strength, which is a lot higher than you'll need for most builds. The less apparent, but still fairly well-known trait is that Strength's natural damage modifier for most weapons exists. It just doesn't work on bows. That said, not all weapons are created equally in the eyes of Strength. While most weapons get a 1% damage boost per point, several special cases exist, such as hammers and mauls getting a 1.1% boost per point, and boots getting a 1.2% boost, while daggers, claws, throwing weapons get a lower 0.75%, and Amazon javelins and spears have the really odd 0.8% boost, which is way out there, and yes, as we said, bows and crossbows get absolutely nothing from Strength. Now, you may immediately think that this is going to be a massive increase to your melee character's damage if you dump into Strength, but the reality is it's a little bit more disappointing in most cases, since the percent boost applies in the same way as auras and combat abilities. So changing a 500% damage boost from your sources such as Fanaticism and, say, Charge or something like that, to a 501% boost is going to be a lot less impressive of a difference. And while there are builds that exploit this, they're far more gimmicky than actually useful. This is why phrases such as enough strength for gear are so common in so many Diablo 2 build guides both here and on other channels. Next up is Dexterity, the stat that wishes everything was as simple as Strength. Obviously, dexterity requirements are still needed for equipment, but they're less common, pretty much exclusively applying to weapons, and topping off with the Shadow Bow with a requirement of 188 dexterity. Though, unlike Strength, dexterity has a direct impact on how your character functions, thanks to how it impacts base attack rating, defense, and for expansion characters, your chance to block. All of this in addition to providing a similar damage boosting effect as Strength, though to far less pieces of gear. The damage boost from Dexterity is far more restrictive, giving bows 1% per point, daggers, throwing weapons and claws 0.75% per point, and Amazon spears and javelins 0.5% per point, and everything else just a big fat 0. The same issues with Strength do apply here, though with less natural damage boosts on the characters that normally use these weapons, these boosts can be slightly more noticeable for your average builds. But that said, damage is probably the least important aspect of Dexterity. Instead, most people look at Dexterity for attack rating and block chance, and to a lesser extent, defense. Thankfully, attack rating and defense are fairly simple, with each point of Dexterity giving 5 points of base attack rating, and every 4 points of Dexterity giving 1 point of base defense, or basically 0.25 defense per point of Dexterity, which is really awkward to say. But anyway, and while we will cover attack rating and defense in another video, just know for now that the goal of these should be good enough, since level also impacts how they both function. Level is a factor in the percent chances of chance to hit and chance to be hit, and neither of these actually affect the actual damage numbers, just these chances to hit and be hit. That said, the complicated pile is unfortunately the chance to block, and this is only applying to expansion characters, whereas non-expansion characters don't have to deal with this. And this is mostly thanks to the fact that different shields have different block chances, which should be fairly obvious. Each class actually has a different base block chance, and it also is affected by level as well. The higher level you are, the higher dexterity you're going to need to maintain that maximum block. The way I approach it for simplicity's sake is, on builds that I need max block for, I generally just check my block chance on my planned endgame shield every few levels and try to keep it between 70 and 75% by dumping dexterity into it as needed. Now, what I mean by that is I will get a shield with the same base block percent chance and just try it on and be like, oh, that's how much I need. It's usually fairly easy to do that because there is a lot of overlap in the shield percents, so do look for that kind of as a strategy. Now for PvP builds, calculating it down to the exact amount you need with equipment can be beneficial for stat planning, especially since you're going to get some dexterity from your equipment with those builds, so you can actually save there and get more in vitality. That said, for most PvE builds, max block isn't as necessary, so sometimes it gets the enough dexterity for gear treatment as well, especially for longer range builds that aren't in the heart of battle. And that's pretty much the same strategy that I take because I build mostly PvE stuff anymore. Next up is Vitality. Often considered the cornerstone stat in Diablo 2, it is responsible for determining how much life and stamina you have. It's fairly straightforward, each point increasing these attributes by an amount based on your class, and unfortunately it does differ class to class. Obviously, without enough life, you're going to be killed frequently and have a bad time, especially if you're a melee character down in the thick of things. Most late game builds also look at the other stats versus Vitality in their planning stages, or in an extremely simplified example, is that point of strength worth the 1% extra damage, or is the life more valuable so I can get off more hits? This can be expanded to equipment requirements as well. Is it better to wear the 100 strength armor with slightly worse stats than, or put the extra 40 strength to wear one with slightly better stats? Is the life gained from the extra 40 points in Vitality going to make a big difference, or is it not going to be nearly as much? And you'd be surprised how much 40 points in Vitality does. And on top of all that, Vitality actually has a hidden aspect to it as well, that is potion criticals. This is something that I actually find some seasoned players don't even know about, weirdly, and it's one of those things that I think people who played it like in the original, like early days will generally know about it more than people who got onto the game later. I don't know why that seems to be the consistent thing there, but yes, potions can critical. Basically, the more vitality you have, the higher chance you have of receiving a double heal from the potions. There is a given formula for it, but generally speaking, you don't need to know the exact percent. It is calculable. It is over on Ariat Summit if you actually want to calculate it out, but basically you reach 50% chance at 202 vitality, and it slowly creeps up from there. Funnily enough, this oddly leads us into energy, which has the exact same thing but for mana potions. And unfortunately, though, energy does not get much more interesting than that. You just have more energy, more chance of double mana recovery. And energy itself pretty much just increases maximum mana as far as its direct effects. Thankfully, though, higher mana does mean faster mana regen, though the reality is it's really easy to raise your current mana without investing energy, and that is one reason why I can count on one hand the number of builds I'd recommend putting energy into after your final respec. And that is why you'll often get strange looks or comments when mentioning adding energy to most builds. That said, it does have a place whenever you're first working your way through normal. This is why in builds you generally do something completely different in normal and then use your respec in the later difficulties. This is something that they added in one of the I want to say it was 1.1 or 1.11, the respec. So you actually got the ability to, hey, I am changing my skills. Yay! Before that, we had to just kind of live with our missteps. But yeah, just don't plan on putting it into your late game build. Like whenever you respec in hell difficulty, plan to just put 0 energy in there, save the items to actually have the plus mana. That'll make life a lot easier on you in the long run, meaning your character can last for, well, pretty much ever, as opposed to being just your character get the initial equipment for something else. But if you found this useful, and this was also a requested video, I forget who requested it, it was a while back and I didn't get around to it, but if you enjoy this and it actually does help you out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to binge Diablo 2 content or other gaming content. But yeah, keep gaming, have fun, peace out, this has been Alzorath, bye.